In 2020, a swarm of locusts the size of Moscow descended on East Africa. It contained over 200 billion insects. In a single day, it consumed enough food to feed 90 million people. Farmers who had spent an entire year growing their crops watched everything disappear in under 4 hours. Governments scrambled. The United Nations declared it the worst outbreak in 70 years. And the world's response was exactly what it has always been. Spray chemicals, deploy aircraft, and hope for the best. It didn't work. It never fully works. And while every government on the planet was busy fighting this thing, China was quietly doing something that nobody else had thought to do. They were farming it. Not to control it, not to study it, to sell it. And what started as a fringe agricultural experiment has quietly grown into a supply chain worth hundreds of millions of dollars, with serious projections to hit 13 billion by 2034. This is the story of how the world's most destructive insect became one of the world's most valuable protein sources, and how China positioned itself at the center of that shift before anyone else even realized it was happening. The desert locust has been destroying human civilization for longer than recorded history. The Bible describes it as one of the plagues of Egypt. Ancient Chinese texts document swarms that triggered famines severe enough to collapse regional governments. And in 2020, when the worst outbreak in a generation swept across East Africa, the scale of damage was almost impossible to process rationally. A single locust swarm can stretch across 460 square miles and contain 40 to 80 million insects per square kilometer. One swarm of that density consumes as much food in a single day as 35,000 people. And during the 2020 crisis, there weren't 1 or 2 swarms. There were dozens, moving simultaneously across Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and deep into the African continent. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimated that in Kenya alone, crop losses reached 15% in a single growing season. In Ethiopia, over 40,000 tons of grain were wiped out. In Somalia, 247,000 acres of farmland were stripped bare. What makes locusts so uniquely difficult to fight is not just their appetite, it's their biology. Under normal conditions, they are solitary insects, harmless and largely invisible. But when drought compresses vegetation into smaller areas, the insects begin crowding. That crowding triggers a neurological shift driven by serotonin. Their body chemistry changes. Their behavior changes. They shift from avoidance to attraction. And within days, a quiet population explodes into a swarm that moves 150 kilometers a day and respects no border, no fence, and no government response timeline. The standard response, aerial spraying with organophosphate pesticides, has been the global strategy for decades. Countries have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it, and it does reduce swarm numbers in the short term. But it doesn't solve anything structurally, because locusts don't originate from a fixed location you can permanently suppress. They breed opportunistically across vast, often inaccessible terrain, kill one generation, and the conditions that created it often still exist for the next. The chemicals also leave a long tail of consequences: contaminated soil, disrupted ecosystems, residues that accumulate in the food chain. It's expensive, it's imperfect, and after thousands of years, it still hasn't produced a lasting solution. China's relationship with locusts is also ancient. Historical records document devastating outbreaks across northern provinces that helped trigger dynastic collapses. In 2000, Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang faced infestations severe enough to require large-scale aerial spraying campaigns across tens of thousands of square kilometers. The institutional memory of that damage runs deep. But China also has something else: a culinary and agricultural tradition built over 2,000 years that treats insects as a legitimate part of the food system, not as something to be eliminated on sight. Insects have been eaten in China since at least the Zhou dynasty, and today, the domestic edible insect market is already valued at close to $1 billion, built on everything from silkworm pupae to ant larvae to grasshoppers sold in high-end restaurants and traditional medicine shops. That cultural context matters enormously because it meant that when Chinese agricultural researchers started looking at locusts differently, they weren't working against a total psychological wall. They were asking a practical question in a culture that already had practical answers nearby. What is this insect actually worth as a resource? The nutritional data, once you look at it, is genuinely striking. Locusts contain between 50 and 65% protein by dry weight. Beef contains 20 to 25%. Producing 1 kilogram of beef requires approximately 15,000 liters of water. Locusts require a negligible amount by comparison. The carbon footprint of locust production sits roughly 99% lower than cattle. And while a cow takes 18 months to 2 years to reach slaughter weight, a locust completes its entire life cycle, from egg to fully grown adult, in 30 to 45 days. By almost every metric that matters for sustainable food production, the locust outperforms beef by a significant margin. The problem was never the insect. The problem was that nobody had built the infrastructure to capture that value at scale. China started building it. In agricultural provinces like Shandong and Henan, locust farms have been appearing over the past decade in a form that looks nothing like a traditional livestock operation. They are sealed greenhouse systems, precision-controlled environments designed to give locusts exactly the conditions they need to grow as fast as biologically possible, with zero risk of escape into surrounding farmland. The facilities use what is called roof park greenhouse technology, a design specifically developed for high-density insect farming. Inside, rows of fine mesh cages create a controlled habitat where temperature is maintained at 30 to 35 degrees Celsius, and humidity is held between 60 and 70%, a permanent artificial summer that keeps the insects in the accelerated phase of their life cycle. The floor of each enclosure is layered with sand and sawdust to support natural behaviors and reproduction. Fresh plant material is brought in as feed. Every variable that affects growth speed and protein yield is monitored and adjusted. Under these conditions, a new generation of locusts reaches maturity in 30 to 45 days, and multiple harvest cycles are possible throughout the year. When harvest time comes, workers adjust the lighting and temperature inside the cages, which naturally causes the locusts to cluster. They are then collected directly into large containers, clean, efficient, and entirely different from chasing wild swarms across open terrain. The sealed farming model also solves the contamination problem that makes wild harvested locusts commercially useless. When governments respond to outbreaks in the field, they saturate the area with pesticide. Any locusts collected from those swarms carry chemical residue and cannot be safely sold into a food or feed supply chain. Farm-raised locusts, by contrast, are clean, traceable, and meet food safety standards. In Chinese markets, fresh locusts from these farms sell for $8 to $12 per kilogram, giving farmers a reliable revenue stream from what most of the world still treats purely as a threat. What makes the Chinese model more than just an unusual farming operation is the way it turns the locust into multiple simultaneous revenue streams with almost no waste in the system. The largest and most commercially significant application is animal feed. Locusts processed into high-protein meal can partially replace fish meal and soybean meal in the diets of poultry, fish, and livestock, two ingredients that are among the most expensive and supply-constrained in global agriculture. With 50 to 65% protein content and a strong amino acid profile, locust meal improves growth rates in livestock, supports gut health, and reduces the need for antibiotics. Duck farms, frog farms, and commercial poultry operations across China have already formed direct supply contracts with locust breeding facilities. Farmers who switched report lower feed costs and measurably better animal performance within a single production cycle. For human consumption, the approach varies by market. In regions where whole insects are culturally accepted, much of rural Africa and across East Asia, fried and seasoned locusts are sold as high-protein snacks, often at premium prices. For urban markets where consumer psychology is more resistant, the insect is processed into a fine flour and incorporated invisibly into protein bars, baked goods, and nutritional supplements. The consumer gets the nutritional benefit without the psychological barrier. Industry professionals refer to this as the invisible protein strategy, and it is how most analysts expect insect protein to enter mainstream Western food supply chains over the next decade. The third revenue stream is the one most people don't expect. Insect farming generates a waste product called frass. the combination of insect droppings and shed exoskeletons left behind after processing. Locust frass is exceptionally rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the core nutrients that depleted agricultural soil needs most. It is being sold as a premium organic fertilizer back into the farming sector, completing a loop where the locust farm is not just producing food and feed, but actively contributing to the restoration of soil that conventional farming has degraded over decades. The same insect that once stripped fields bare is now helping rebuild them. China takes the model to Africa. The domestic Chinese operation would be significant on its own. But the more strategically interesting move is what is happening in Africa. Chinese investors and agricultural technology firms have begun exporting the controlled farming model to the continent that has suffered most from locust outbreaks, and that simultaneously has the greatest need for accessible, affordable protein. The logic is straightforward. Africa has the raw material in abundance. It has communities that already know the terrain, already understand the seasonal patterns of locust activity, and in many cases already consume insects as a normal part of their diet. What it has lacked is the processing infrastructure, the cold chain logistics, and the institutional knowledge to turn that raw material into a scalable commercial product. Chinese capital and technical expertise can provide exactly those missing pieces. On the ground, the impact is already tangible in several regions. Local communities are being paid to harvest dormant locusts at night, when the insects are least active and easiest to collect without chemical intervention. What was previously a disaster that arrived and took everything now generates income for the same people it used to destroy. Startups operating on models similar to Chinese-backed facilities are building processing plants, developing local supply chains, and creating employment in regions that had essentially no economic activity during outbreak periods beyond emergency response. Some analysts describe this dynamic as biotech diplomacy, China solving a genuine agricultural problem for its trade partners while simultaneously establishing control over the infrastructure of a supply chain that is projected to be worth $13 billion globally by 2034. The global edible insect market was valued at approximately $1.7 billion in 2025. The countries and companies that own the farming technology, the processing facilities, and the distribution networks when that market reaches scale will hold enormous influence over one of the most important protein transitions in modern food history. The locust has not changed. What humans chose to do with it has changed. For thousands of years, civilizations treated it as a force of pure destruction, something to be fought, suppressed, and ideally eliminated. Governments spent enormous resources on that effort and never fully succeeded because you cannot permanently eliminate something that breeds faster than you can kill it and moves faster than any border can contain it. China's approach was not to try harder at the same strategy. It was to stop seeing the locust as a problem to be solved and start seeing it as a resource to be used. The biology that made it terrifying, the explosive reproduction rate, the rapid maturation, the sheer protein density packed into each tiny body is exactly what makes it valuable under controlled conditions. The traits that powered the disaster also power the solution. The result is an emerging industry that turns crop destruction into animal feed, converts famine threats into organic fertilizer, and gives communities that were once victims of locust outbreaks a reason to welcome them instead. It won't end locust outbreaks. Wild swarms will keep forming as long as the climate conditions that trigger them continue to exist. But it changes the economic relationship between humans and this insect in a way that no pesticide campaign ever could. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do with a problem is refuse to treat it like one. If this kind of shift in perspective is something you want to keep seeing, subscribe to Factorify. There's a lot more of this kind of story coming.